Now, let me tell you who are the folks going to be sharing their wisdom with us today. Karen Denny is the Director of Internships and Career Development at the Philip Merrill College of Journalism, University of Maryland. Phil Friedman is the News Director for Delaware Online and the Wilmington News Journal, and is the Regional Editor for Investigations for USA Today. And Jackie Jones is Dean of Global Journalism at Morgan State University. So these folks know a lot of stuff. They're going to share it with you with some of the things that they think you would be interested in, and then we'll open it up for questions in the second half, and you can pepper them with specifics that you were really interested in. So, Phil, why don't you kick us off, if you would, from the newsroom's perspective here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Rebecca and folks, for hosting us. And, you know, interns at our paper and USA Today, interns play a key role for us, not just filling in during vacation periods, but it helps us identify and sort of train and get a really good introduction to folks when they intern with us. A lot of our interns can parlay that into a full-time job afterwards, so it's a good experience. I also teach as an adjunct at University of Delaware, and the message I have today is the message I give to the students. It's mostly seniors in my class. Well, I guess the problem is I don't see them till they're seniors, but you know, how do you get an internship? Like, how do you get the attention of a newspaper? And I'll speak mostly from my perspective. A lot of what I say probably transcends different newspapers, but you know, don't hold me to it. If you apply at another newspaper, they may have different things that go into making their decision. But for the most part, don't wait until you're a junior or a senior to get involved. You know, I heard a couple of people say they were freshmen in the master's or new in their master's program or sophomores. That's when you need to start getting out there. That the reason I teach at the University of Delaware is because we have we share the financial costs of a intern actually 2 interns every year. And I want to see the students and help and see them in class and help and know who we're getting. It used to be that we would just I would get a recommendation from a professor and go with that, you know, but I want to meet them. You know, it used to be, all right, we want to interview interns, but it's hard interviewing somebody in 20 minutes or half an hour, and really getting to know them. So, but I would say that the key thing you have to do is not wait till the end of your undergraduate career to get involved with the school newspaper or start freelancing or thinking about your resume and your clips. I'm not saying panic about getting a job when you're 20 years old or anything. But as a senior, it's hard to rush and get all this done. And, you know, the idea of getting clips and professional clips, even while you're in college, can go a long way in helping you secure that internship that the folks that we bring on as interns and a lot of bigger papers where you're probably trying to get to, they don't want to see your homework from class and writing a story. You know, they want to see that a professional organization spent money and paid you to write something for them that they think is good enough to put in their publication. And the college newspaper is a good start of that. I say from my perspective, again, this is me, not every editor in the world. Obviously, my perspective is if I see college clips, somebody's a sophomore or a junior sends me clips from the college paper. The one thing I do know is, well, I hypothesize, I shouldn't convict, but is that because of time constraints and things, maybe the editing wasn't as intense as it might have been at our newspaper, which the positive for me is I think then I'm seeing what your stories really look like. You know, in the professional world, I've been duped by people who send in clips that have been heavily edited at a newspaper, and wow, what a good writer. Then, you know, which is why we always make full-time job applicants do a writing test, a simple one, just so we can see right? Do your clips match what you write? What are we getting? But getting involved in the school newspaper or some school publication or some publication outside of class is imperative. Like we don't bring on interns who don't have clips, and by clips, I mean, and I get it when you're a sophomore, how much do I have? But at least work on the school paper. The idea is that we want people who want to do this. We're looking for passionate people. We want people that want to do more than just their homework. I would say the other thing that's really, really important is, I know it's new. It's a new experience. You might not have done this before in this level and you're nervous, but don't be shy in the interview. The interviews sometimes are only half an hour. Like I said, they may not be very long. You get one shot at this. And when the editor or the person interviewing says, do you have any questions? Have questions, right? Think of the job you're applying for. You want to be a journalist. You're applying to work at a newspaper. There's things you need to know. If you don't have questions about that, the editor or the person hiring you is going to think, oh, well, what are you going to be like out in the field interviewing people? You have to be inquisitive. I mean, I would say ahead of time, make a list of questions, even if it's, what are the hours? Will there be an opportunity to work different beats, or will I be doing one thing? How will the indoctrination period go, like the first couple of days, the first week? Will I have a mentor? Will I have one editor to report to? Just think of things to ask. I mean, those are all good questions to know when you get offered the internship, hopefully, that you know what you're walking into. But it's an almost automatic cross off for me. If I said, do you have any questions? No, you pretty much answered them all. There's no way I answered I've answered all the questions. Okay. Just, and it's really just a basic, are you inquisitive? Right. That's what reporters need to be, and photographers and editors, they need to be inquisitive. And if you can't, you need to show it all the time, right? You can't just turn it on and off. If you're a journalist, that's part of your DNA. So, but again, like, we look for people with energy. We look for people who can write a little bit, but who want to learn, right? And expressing that and showing some clips is what we're after. And that's what I tell the students in my class is that, I just had end of semester one-on-ones with my class this week, and they're all but one of them's a senior. And a lot of them don't have clips, and we're talking about what do they do. I said, well, this is what you do. You leave this and walk over to the school newspaper and ask them how you can help and get some stuff done over break. And, you need to have some things to show. You can't just graduate school with straight A's and have no experience. So an internship is a good experience, having an internship at any paper, but a pretty good paper will help you get that job. So for now, getting an internship is a key, clean pathway to doing that. So, ta-da. Okay,
drum roll, please. All right, thanks very much, Phil. I'm sure you planted some seeds for questions in the second half. I will say, do give a little extra, put a little thought into those questions. The last paper I worked for, I was the editor of the Daily Record in Baltimore, which does not have a national presence. But anyway, make a long story short, I was surprised how many times I would go to internships, even or job fairs, even in Maryland. And I would say, and what questions do you have for me? And after a long, awkward silence, the student would say, how often does your paper come out? And I would say, well, as the name might suggest to you, every day. Next question, please. But that was really the end of the dialogue as far as I was concerned. So do put some thought into your questions as well. Okay, Karen, let's segue to you.
All right, thank you. I took some notes, so those are some good tips. I really appreciate that. I'm going to pass those along. So I'm going to sort of give you an overview of, I've been here about a year, and I'm going to give you an overview of sort of the top notes that I've taken and things I think students have, needed the most. So just as we've heard, it takes experience to get experience, and people feel like it's a catch-22 in journalism. And so starting with what's in easy reach is a really good way to start. So student publications, and at Maryland, there are many. So I would say, my suggestion would be try more than one if you can, and try different jobs or beats. So, you might want to do sports over here and try, news or local student government or something over here. Try to get some variety and test out things and to see what you like. The other suggestion is everybody wants someone who's really good at social media. And as long as it exists, Twitter is a good place to start, but, try whatever, and start covering something yourself using social media. Cover, so some examples I would have is cover the Grammys, a road race, NASCAR, a vote in Congress or locally, that this album's come out, live sporting events. Cover whatever you can yourself and pre-write tweets that have context that you can insert as the event's unfolding, and tag newsmakers and do that research beforehand. And if you can start to get some traction in your social media, I think a lot of publications would appreciate that. And it's where you can cover things that may be, national events that you may not have a chance otherwise. And it's good practice. So you could try that. Reach out to your hometown media. So if you're going home for the summer and, maybe it's just your freshman year and you feel like you need to do something between freshman and sophomore year, reach out to whatever media is at home. Offer to cover, the high school graduation, a parade, a town council vote, local businesses. What are they up to in the summer? Try to think of something you can do to cover for your hometown organization, which could be, really local TV, public access TV. It could be radio, could be a digital publication, it could be traditional print newspaper. Just sort of reach out to them yourself and see if they'd be interested in having some help if you're nervous about doing a formal internship. So once you get to that point where you want to get a more formal internship, you're going to need a resume and a cover letter or a personal essay. So here's some tips about those. Both of these things should be one page. You really shouldn't go beyond a page. It doesn't have to be fancy. And in fact, I've heard, this is the truth. I've heard some internship providers say that there's, a couple common templates and they will sort of put them up on the wall and mock you. Here's template number 1, person number 15 that has this template. You can show originality by sort of making your own fancy resume, or just use plain text. It's really fine, do your own, because templates can be hard to fiddle around with, and they can tell that you haven't really figured these out for yourself. So think about that. Remember that your resume and your cover letter are kind of going to go together. So just like when you were applying to college, your college essay was not, in 9th grade, I took trombone, and then I also took, honors chemistry, and I learned about molecules. And then in 10th grade, I did this, and, 11th grade, then I practiced the xylophone. And, that's not what you put in your college essay, because that doesn't really tell about who you are as a person. So your cover letter, I want you to think about it as a writing sample, a way for an organization to get to know you and to talk about how you're a problem solver or you try new things, how your brain works, how you think. It's an opportunity to share that. And that's how you'll really stand out in a cover letter. Both of these obviously should have no typos. They should be really carefully edited. So you can ask friends, anybody, to take a look at it. I would say that sort of objective statement at the top is going away. So for people's parents who are suggesting you do that, you might say that, there's a better use of that resume space, but these are subjective and it's up to you. You can put what you want on there. high school stuff can start to drop off. And then every college story that you write, every college job, every media job you take, anything in communications, that can all be added on. Okay. And my final thought is to remember to be professional. And what does that mean? It's a, my top tip to students here is to read and respond to email. You're going to get a lot of opportunities and information via email. And you really need to do yourself a solid and open them and read them and respond to them professionally and quickly. If it's something that's at all of interest to you. Email's the way professionals communicate. And there's an expectation that you're reading them. And, a lot of students don't. And I think if I get it, you've been sitting there for years with this pandemic and information's just coming at you and you're just sort of trying to triage yourself. But this is a way to find out what's out there for you. And you want to help people help you. So, for example, for the MDDC internship program, you have to get letters, you have to get some references and recommendations, right, Tom? So you want to give people the time to help you, but it's also really helpful to say to the person, I'm applying for this, here's a link. Here's a link to what I'm applying to. I know you because I was in your X class this semester. My favorite story I wrote in your class was this. I think I'd be a really good fit for this internship or job for this reason. And here's my resume. Here's what I've been up to since we knew each other. I think you can help people really talk you up the more information you share with them and know the difference between a reference and a letter of recommendation, because a reference is usually a phone call and a letter of recommendation takes a lot more work and time to share for you. So the more you can put into your request, the more you're helping the person paint a really awesome picture of you. And definitely do not tell someone if they're about to get a call about you. If someone offers, hey, if you ever need a reference, let me know. What that means is let me know when I might need to be a reference for you and for what job, because you don't want someone to be called who kind of can't speak eloquently and in a really good way about you, because they want to help you. And the more you let them know it's coming, the better job they'll do to sell you for that job. So, the last thing I think the theme of this whole conversation I'm having is take agency, know what you want to do, get the information about how you need to get there and plan. So that you're not at the end of your senior year and have no clips. Like Phil was saying, start planning. And as soon as you figure this out, wherever you are, start making your plan. Okay, thank you all.
Good, thanks, Karen. Lots of good information there. And I'll just add one small thing about emails and email addresses, particularly. If you haven't already done this, pick an email address that looks and sounds professional. Not your dog's nickname or anything like that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. So let's go to Jackie Jones, who can bring the journalism education perspective and the newsroom perspective and put it all together. Thanks, Jackie.
Thanks, Tom. One of the things I would say, and Karen was a perfect entree to a lot of this stuff. There's some basic stuff that you ought to do in preparing for internships, for your first internships. And one of which is trusting your faculty. Most of us have had experience in the industry and we've got a clue. We talk to people, we still have friends in the industry, we have contacts, we have people telling us, giving us feedback on what they did or didn't get from our interns, what they wish our interns had, what the expectations are. So we're kind of on top of that game. So when we tell you you need to have clips, when we tell you you need to have a cleaned up reel, whatever it is, trust us on it. Don't wait till the last minute to come and ask us for a recommendation. I had a student come to me once and say, I'm looking for an internship. And I said, okay, so where have you been looking? I'm just getting started. I'm like, this is January and you're just starting to look. The best internships go early. So you want to start early, but you should be preparing every year, building up to the big internships. Don't be afraid to go to a smaller market. You know, you have students, I don't want to go to Hagerstown. I don't want to go to Frederick. Like, these are good news organizations, and that's a good place to start. Everybody's not going to get USA Today or the Washington Post as their first internship. And you've got to have something to show for it. And so the same student, I said, well, you know, what do you want to do? And she said, well, I want to intern at ABC. And I said, where have you interned before? I haven't. And I said, so basically what you're telling me is you want me as your, I was then department chair, to call up a friend at ABC and say, you ought to hire this student because she's really smart and I like her. And she said, yeah. I thought, well, that's not going to happen. So let's start again. So working for student media, thinking about what market your material works best for, where you're going to get the best training, is always helpful. At Morgan, we have performance centers where students work on news, they work on their reels, they work as a social media professionals, even our PR and advertising students have an opportunity to work in what we call the strategy shop, which is an on-campus PR agency. So you have the practical experience. We have a practicum class, which Professor Kent, who introduced himself earlier, teaches to have the students work on student media so that they have that experience before they get to an internship. So then they know how to conduct themselves once they get that opportunity. You talked a little bit about cover letters and resume. Your cover letter tells the story. You're a storyteller. So tell me why I should be interested in you. Not, I'm Jackie Jones and I'm applying for a reporting job. You know, everybody is. So what makes you different from everybody else? I had a student who had interned one year who came back from covering the Olympics, which is a pretty hotshot internship, right? He got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma right after he got back. And he obviously lost time because he was fighting for his life. So by the time he graduated, the economy had changed. There was a recession going on. He didn't have an opportunity to get his initial job at a news organization because nobody was hiring. So he went into finance and decided he still wanted to be in news media. So he said, well, I don't know what to do. I said, tell your story. You were at the top of your game. And then boom, you got knocked back on your heels. You weren't even sure you were going to live to tell the tale. And now you're back. And through all of this, you always wanted to be in journalism. I said, even if you don't get the job, an editor is going to call you in just to have a conversation with you because that's such a compelling story. And so that's what he did. And then he ended up getting a job at Sirius XM. And so make sure that you're telling something that compels people. That tells me two things. One is that you've got an interesting story, but two, it tells me you know how to tell one. And so that's going to make an editor pay attention to what you do. Go to a smaller market. Don't be afraid to try different things. I think, Tom, you might have mentioned, or maybe it was Phil, that you might want to do something different than what the job is that you're applying for. And so my son is a sports writer, but his first internship was covering cops and courts one summer. And he said it ended up paying off because years later as a sports writer, he was covering coaches who got in trouble for one thing or another. You know, players get into things. And so he knew where to go to look up that information. He didn't have to ask the cops reporter to bail him out. He didn't have to wonder if somebody was willing to kind of tell him the whole story. He could go get his own information. And that made him a stronger reporter. And now he's covering the Utah Jazz and, you know, for the Athletic, and he's having the time of his life covering what he always wanted to cover. But he said, being to take those jobs that he wasn't particularly interested in. Most students who want to be sports writers, you want to cover the NBA, you want to cover the NFL, you want the big sports, the hotshot sports. That's not where you're going to start. You're going to start with high school preps. You're going to start with Division 2, 3 schools before you get to Division 1 program. You're going to have to work through all of that to get to the high profile gigs. So you might as well just understand that there's something to be learned from all of those experiences. And you'd be surprised, sometimes you get kind of diverted along the way because you find something that's way more interesting than you thought it would be. And you've turned it into your own vehicle to kind of help launch and build your career. I would say that don't hesitate to ask for feedback from your bosses. You know, a lot of times we hide, we hope that no one ever calls us into the office, nobody ever asks, because you think you're going to be in trouble. If you really want to get better, you got to have a conversation with somebody. And if you're not going to necessarily have that with the managing editor or the executive editor of the paper, but you got your a supervising editor, you've got other people in the newsroom. Look at people who are doing well. What do they do well and what don't you do well? And how can you get better at it? And have those conversations. Make sure people know who you are in the newsroom so that you've got a better shot at that. And all of that begins at home. You talk to your faculty members. We have a sign in our one of our newsrooms that says, talk to a professor. We're here for you. You know, we're going to help you get through those moments that are tough when you're trying to talk to a source and they don't want to be bothered with you. You know, how do you follow up when someone says something that you know is totally ridiculous, not to get into an argument with a source? All these sort of fundamental things that you don't think about. You think you're just going to go out and ask people questions and they're going to happily respond to you because you're a reporter. Of course they're going to talk to you. Well, no, people don't want to talk to us and they don't particularly care. And so you've got to learn those things. And then all the foundational stuff, making sure your resume is clean, making sure that your cover letter makes sense, that you've taken the, you know, grammar, spelling, punctuation things seriously, and that you are also thinking about what you are, when you don't know what to do, ask the question. That's the thing that we get back from employers, is that when they get stuck, our students often fail to ask the question. They just kind of sit there because they don't want to admit that they don't know. And then they end up not being invited back for an internship or not getting a good reference because they were too scared to ask for help when they were struggling to get something done. And the final thing I'll say is with your references, when you're asking a faculty member for a reference, make sure not only that they know that they might be on your list as a reference, but know what they're going to say about you. I've had a couple of instances where I've had issues with students where I've told them, please don't list me as a reference because I cannot in good conscience say anything that's going to be helpful to you. And so the students who know that I'm willing to be a reference for them know that, but the ones who don't also know that. And you need to know why I cannot refer you. And that gives you a clue on what you need to do to better prepare yourself for an opportunity.
Okay, great advice from all three corners here. Thanks so much. And I think it's thought-provoking, and which I hope will open us up to some discussions here. You know, Jackie, you took me back to my youth, which is a long time ago. My first two internships I did were at my hometown paper, which was the Atlanta Constitution, which was a blessing. I was able to start at a paper that big, but I was in sports and I loved it. And I learned a ton of stuff. You learn how to, accuracy is important. Deadlines are important. My God, are deadlines important. You have to learn how to interview people on the fly. Talk to them about, it's easy to interview heroes after the game that they won. It's hard to interview the people who took it on the chin, and how do you get them to talk about it? So anyway, many transferable skills were learned in those two sports internships before I moved over to news. All right, so let's see. Let's open it up for questions at this point. We've got about 20 minutes to go. So who has a question for one or all of our panelists?
While everybody's mulling their questions, I wanted to bring up two things. So as the end recipient of many internship applications, Sam and I lovingly pieced together all the bits and bobs that students send to us. I have to say, simplicity and PDFs are going to be your friend. Pretty much every application that we have received for the MDDC internship program, which that application period ends on the 15th. So it's still available if you're wanting to apply. Every single one has had some sort of issue, missing information, a PDF that doesn't work, links, something is wrong with every single one. We track it down. We follow up with people, but you cannot depend on the internship coordinator being magnanimous and caring enough. So don't trip yourself up by being either so complex or so fancy that people can't actually read what you're trying to send. So that's just my little PSA. And then my question is, when you get to the interview stage, you've made it past all the things, what are you looking for in the interview? Phil asked about questions. Make sure you always have questions, but are there sort of magic things that that selection committees are looking for in an interview?
Well, I will say real fast about when you submit your materials, whether for an internship, pardon me, or a job, that hiring managers want to get the best person, but when they get a ton of applications, subconsciously or maybe consciously, we're looking for reasons to discard applications. And if you open it and we can't get to your clips or your resumes, password protected or something like that, a lot of times I'm not emailing you back. I'm putting you in a discard pile. And that, I had a student yesterday asking about that. I said, whatever is the easiest for the person to open it and read what you're trying to get them. But to your question, Rebecca, about what are we looking for? Like I think the person is making a case to work for us, right? Sort of like, I want to see how they think and act and work. And if you come to us, and like Tom said before, somebody asks, oh, what paper is this again? Or how many times a week do you don't just know the basics, like spend a couple days. I don't mean 48 hours, but spend a couple days, look around. You can Google stuff, look at the staff page, see if you see somebody or somebody that knows somebody or went to the same school as you, and don't be afraid to call them up and say, hey, you don't know me, but do you mind, or email and say, do you mind talking for 5 or 10 minutes? I'm applying for an internship. I just want to get a little bit of a, Reader's Digest of what it's like working there and what that's all within the rules. I tell people, this isn't middle school or high school or college anymore when you take a test or an interview. It's closed book and you're not allowed to use outside sources or anything. One of my first jobs back, I guess some newspapers still do it, we don't as much. I had to take like an editing test, how to spell things and see if I knew things. And they put me in the newspaper's library to take the test. Right. And I'm thinking, well, why can't I use the library? I'm in it. Like there's one word I didn't know, I wasn't sure how to spell. I'm like, well, hell, I'm going to open the dictionary here and figure it out. Like, it's not against the rules. Like when you go out, when you do your job, there's no hard and fit. Well, no, you're not allowed to ask people questions. Like go in, like this is, you're not just interviewing to impress them. You're interviewing because you want to know, is this the kind of place I want to work? Is this place going to help me grow or learn? Or might, it should be more than just a line on your resume. Like if you work somewhere, you should know about it, and they should see that you took the time to research it and you know a lot about it, and that the interview can start at a higher level. You're not just saying, oh, so how do I get to your newsroom? And it sounds funny and odd, but like those kind of questions, like ask your friends that, like figure them out. And be prepared. Like if you're writing a story, you're not going to show up at somebody's who you're interviewing and not know anything about the story. You're going to research the heck out of it and know it and have questions, and you'll have a strategy about how you're going to ask them some sort of softball questions at first to get them talking, but then you can really sort of dig in and, get to what you want to know. So, have a strategy for your interview too. You're trying to impress them, and the best way to impress them is to be really smart. So, or appear to be really smart, in my case.
Well said. Who else has any insights into Rebecca's question? Does anybody remember Rebecca's question at this time? What are you looking for in an interview? Is there any particular do's or don'ts? You're always impressed by the applicant who does this kind
Well,
of thing.
thank you. Sorry, I had a little spill on my desk in the intervening, so
No.
I'm off camera. But what other questions do we have from the floor? Sabna, looks like you came on camera. Is that foreshadowing? All right, tell us what's going on.
Sure. Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for this, for the panel and for the, oh, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, no, thank you for this panel, for the opportunity to hear from all of you. I am a career switcher. I was working in healthcare for the last 10 years. And so I'm kind of new at a lot of this. I have a lot of experience in terms of work, but not a lot of journalism experience. And so I'm still planning on being in school for I'm in my first semester. I'm planning to be in school for about 4 semesters. And I think I was kind of wondering that for someone who might be like kind of at the beginning stages of building a career from like the ground up, and who still maybe has some time in school, like what should be a goal for the first internship? Like I sort of feel like really, really interested in getting, experience, reps, things like that. And I also recognize that there's certain things that with my level of experience are sort of outside, I'm unlikely to be a competitive candidate for at this stage. So I think I'm kind of just wondering, like, what should be a goal for someone who's maybe new at this in terms of like the first kind of internship? What sort of opportunity is like worth going for, and what should be a goal for the first internship?
I'd say you have a built-in beat with the area that you have expertise in. And so you should, make sure you pump that up when you talk to folks, and think about how you've seen that area covered versus what your experience is in the field, and what kind of stories you think haven't been told that ought to be told, and how you would go at it, and who are the sources that are often overlooked, and perhaps find ways to address some of that where you are. If there are health issues on campuses that are frequently overlooked or something like that, kind of make those the stories that you do for the campus newspaper. Make sure that you're involved with student media, but also kind of pitch stories to local papers and say, I ran across this study and I think I can break this down in English for the average person to understand. Make sure you're doing those kinds of things, because I think if you can promote what makes you stand out from the rest of the crowd, that's going to give you an added advantage that you wouldn't have had if you just kind of said, oh, I don't know anything about journalism and I don't do anything, but I'm going to give it my best shot. You've kind of got an area of expertise that a lot of people are working toward. Most journalists come in and they are kind of GA people. And so they kind of do whatever's thrown at them. You've got an area of knowledge that a lot of folks don't have. So I think see that as an asset and then just build your skills around that.
Yeah, I would say that whether internships or job candidates, we look for people who are passionate, and Jackie makes a good point. Don't accentuate what you see as your negatives, right? Say, look, whatever drew you to journalism, that's the fire that you have to be a journalist, right? And that's a lot, goes a long way to interviewers.
Mhm.
And yes, why might, they'll ask you, like, think about the questions, like if you're them, what kind of questions are they going to ask you, and have answers ready. So you're not, oh, well, geez, I don't know, or I don't have that many clips. Say, well, the reason I'm a lot of clips is because I was working in the healthcare industry and I just came into this. I have a love for it, a passion for it, and I can find stories that, I would say, and please nobody take offense to this, students that go to school to be reporters study journalism. Much of, they take whatever prerequisites the school has, and they take a lot of journalism classes, but they don't have an expertise necessarily. Some do because they have one or seek one out, but they're experts in learning and knowing how to write a story, but they don't have like a field expertise to go looking for stories. And that's really what editors are looking for, reporters who can see stories where other people can't. And if you are inside the healthcare industry, you see things that a lot of people care about, a lot of potential readers would care about that somebody else might not. That's how I would position yourself. But think they're going to look at my resume and say, well, geez, you just started journalism 20 minutes ago. Your answer to that is, oh yeah, you caught me. Sorry, see you later. It's here's why I'm a journalist, and here's what I can bring that nobody else in your room, including probably a lot of senior reporters, can bring. So
Great advice, Phil. And I was thinking as you were talking there, also be prepared. Already think about an example that you would give them, because if the interviewer is on his or her toes, once you talk about your passion and your expertise in this specific field, and you can find stories that maybe other reporters couldn't, you would likely get a challenge. Well, what kind of a story? Give me an example. What are you talking about?
Yes.
So be prepared with at least one example that you could hit over the fence, because you really had given it some thought.
Yeah, and that whole idea of like thinking what's going to be asked, like there's a lot of good interviewers, and there's a lot of interviewers that fall back on the age old, well, tell me something you do great and tell me something you don't do that great, and you have, like, you're going to get that question, what do you need to work on or whatever, and don't be caught off guard, like have a good, positive, energetic response for that. The interviews aren't necessarily a test to see how you think on your feet. They want to know how well you think, and did you think ahead of time? Are you prepared, and can you have these answers ready, because that's how you're going to go after a story, right? You're not going to be like, I'll figure it out when I get there. You want to know everything, so when you interview somebody, they can't BS you with an answer. And when they try to, you can say, no, that's not true. I have this document here. I read about this. It's not what happens. Treat yourself that way.
I think it depends too. What do you want to do? But I think health is broad and it covers everything, money, politics, there's data behind health. There's understanding, disparities in society with health. So, you have, health is sports, health is business, health is everything. So if you can kind of use that and then use that to, kind of pick a lane to focus on, use the student media, use your own, social media to start talking about that. I think, just showing your expertise and sort of your breadth of how you think about the world through this lens is really going to help people want to take you on and, work with you. I think local community journalism is a great place to start. And, there are local organizations around here that would probably love to have you helping in any kind of a way. So it's really, part of it's going to be, what do you want to do on the end, and then you kind of reverse engineer, like Rebecca was saying, other people were saying, you kind of reverse engineer. And Jackie was saying, how that person got there, or what got them there. And then you kind of go back in time and figure that out. You want to make something that you can show to people. And when you make something you can show, whether it's a story, a graphic, that's going to help them sort of see that you're really trying. And where you work isn't going to be as important as what you choose to focus on and, you know, the subject matter you choose. Because you have world experience. And I think that you know how the world works. You must, if you're in healthcare. And that's what's, you know, that's what's going to set you apart over perhaps an undergrad who's had a couple of local community internships already. You already understand, you know, how things work. And that's that higher level of understanding that newspapers in particular, well, all news organizations really looking for. So yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, who else has a question?
It's a hand raised.
Yes,
Yeah.
I see a hand. Benicio.
All right. So as I mentioned, I'm a sophomore right now. So I'm just starting to get into internships and applying for jobs because as you all like stated, it's good to start early. So I recently had some like good opportunities thrown my way, especially in the field of like kind of videography in journalism, like news videography and kind of like the documentary aspect. And I was wondering, realistically, is it better for me to pursue some of these? There was a panel hosted yesterday at the Merrill College where they had some speakers come on, and one of them actually told me that I should send like a cold email to Vox to like ask for internships. And I was wondering, realistically, is the better approach for me right now, for someone that doesn't have a lot of interest, to send that cold email and like try and pursue it, or should I use some of the resources more that I've been offered by the professors, or like opportunities that are openly shown at the Merrill College, just from like not having a lot of experience?
I would say you should do both.
Mhm.
I don't think there's any reason why you wouldn't do both things. And even if it's all there, it's, you know, is it Vox? So if Vox has an open internship
It
program.
was Vox, yeah.
Yeah, and they'd have like a, you know, sort of a web page where they say, here's some information about our internships and how to apply. I would do that. And I would also, you know, cold email some people there. I wouldn't, and, you know, I think Jackie mentioned it, Phil mentioned it, figure out whom you might know that's connected there. Look use LinkedIn and see if people who work there went to Maryland, you know, that kind of thing, where you can kind of network that way a little bit. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't do both things.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Just trying to figure out like kind of like the timing, because I kind of want to use, I'm taking 320 next semester. So
Yeah.
I was told that because of like my skill set from what I've shown to my professors, that I should kind of pursue like different avenues to just make myself multifaceted. So I was just kind of like trying to chart out next semester how I want to grow the different fields that I'm pursuing, but like obviously writing for journalism, but also like kind of editing, like for video and whatnot. So I was just wondering.
Yeah, I would say don't be worried to ever ask a question or send a cold email. The worst that's going to happen is it'll get ignored, or somebody will say, hey, thanks for reaching out. We don't have anything, right? Nobody, like, I don't know if it's ingrained in us from depending where we went to elementary school or middle school, like, whoa, you don't want to look dumb asking a question. Like, what, you know, you sending an email, you're like, oh, geez, somebody might think I'm an idiot. They don't, right? They think, oh, you're asking, you're being inquisitive. And, you know, that old saying, like 100% of the questions or things you don't try happen, right? And you could send cold emails to Vox in 100 different places and get no response or no traction. But if one of them responds, it was worth it. And the other 99 or 49, I forget what number I said, are just like, won't even remember. We probably, one of the best reporters we've had in a long time, who's now an editor at our place, she not continues, but every several months, she reminds me that she applied for an internship and I never responded to her. And I don't even remember or even her replying, or maybe I responded and whatever it was, I don't remember it at all. Right. And that's somebody who now is like a key member of our newsroom staff. And so what you think people think about you or remember may not be true. And if it is, well, who cares, right? Don't be paralyzed by any kind of feeling like that. Just ask the question.
Mhm.
Nobody's going to think anything.
All right, thank you.
And don't be a serial applicant, you know, that send out multiple, you know, I've seen people say, okay, I'm going to apply for this job, and then they don't get it, and then they try to apply for the next one. All the deadlines tend to be around the same. They're looking all around the same time. So just send it out there and see who nibbles. And sometimes they'll say, well, you don't have enough experience yet, but I encourage you. I would write, when I was young, I would write back and say, okay, where do you hire from? Who do you look at? Where could I get the best training to do that if I want to be in your newsroom? What are you looking for? What do the successful candidates have? And then you kind of build up a conversation with that person. And that person might leave and go to another news organization, and they'll remember you, and there, and they'll say, oh, I saw your application and file. What are you doing these days? You just, the more people you know, the better you help yourself. So don't ever limit yourself. Just kind of see what's out there. And then if you get more than one offer, you can decide what's going to be the best for you at this moment in time.
And I would just jump in and add to that, that oftentimes we'll have, when our newsroom, so the Press Association has member newsrooms across Maryland, Delaware, and DC. Pretty much every print and online news entity is a member of ours. When they are looking for interns, they will call to say, okay, who didn't you accept to the program but was promising? Conversely, we may have a slot because we're kind of geographically targeted. We like to match people geographically appropriately. We'll ask our members, like, is there anyone that you couldn't hire as an intern, but you think we should consider? So there is a lot of, I mean, horse trading makes it sound so wrong, but there is, there's a lot of communication. And in areas like Maryland and Delaware and DC, it's a really small community. So that can work to your advantage. It can also work to your detriment. So if you burn a bridge one place, you're kind of burning that bridge in a lot of places. So this is life lessons. Do what you say you're going to do it to the best of your ability, and don't be afraid to try, but always communicate. And I'm noting that it's 1:01. So Tom, do you want to hand it back to you to wrap us up and go from there?
Yes, indeed. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for our panelists, especially, and for your sharing of your wisdom and your experience and your insights. And thanks for the folks that we had in the audience today. And we will be reaching out to remind people that it's not too late to apply for this internship, and B, not too late for you to be able to tune in and listen to the recording and still get the benefit of all this good insight and expertise. So thanks for being with us. Thanks for our panel, and best wishes for the holidays to everybody.